story is told about a very wealthy man who never went to church, or very rarely, and he was on his deathbed, and he called the pastor. And the pastor came and he says, "Father, you know that I never really cared much for church matters, but I really want to be assured of salvation. Do you suppose I would go to heaven if I gave $1 million gift to the building fund and $100,000 to you personally, Father?" Well, the pastor kind of thought about that for a couple seconds, and he said, I don't really know if it would help or not, but let's try it and see if it works. Well, we already kind of know in our hearts that there are higher expectations to get to heaven. This really isn't enough. And in today's gospel, we begin a series of Sundays leading up to Lent in which we look at Matthew's chapter 5 through 7, the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes. And we begin to see what it looks like in the kingdom of God. We begin to see what it looks like to be a Christian, what it means to be Jesus. And the author of the Gospel of Matthew goes out of his way to make a point that at the beginning of this sermon, Jesus walks up a mountain and sits down. Because the author wants to compare Jesus to Moses, who went up Mount Sinai and received the 10 Commandments from God, was God's lawgiver. Because Jesus, like Moses, is going to be giving us a new commandment. He is greater than Moses, and so are his commandments. We begin to hear his expectations. And they're much higher than the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are mostly minimum expectations. Don't steal, don't lie, don't kill, don't be coveting what belongs to others. And when Jesus begins his Sermon on the Mount, it's the call to be like his Father, to be like God, to be merciful, clean of heart, peacemakers. Now these higher standards, they can ring true in us, but they can also be a little scary at sometimes. Like, I'd rather just make the minimum. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just live our lives selfishly for ourselves, and whatever was left in our checkbook, the beneficiary was some nonprofit charity, and whatever went to charity, that's what got us in heaven. But we shouldn't be in a panic when we hear that we are to be like God, merciful, clean of heart, peacemakers. Let's just focus briefly on the first beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of God. To be poor in spirit is the awareness of our weakness, the awareness of our dependency on God, the awareness of indebtedness to God for everything. In effect, it's just a calling to be humble and to realize for all good things, I need to go to God. That seems attainable. In order to reach these high expectations, to be poor in spirit, and then the kingdom of God is ours, partially even in this life, and then fully in eternity. I would like to just adjust gears slightly and recognize that this is Catholic Schools Week. And back up a little bit. Our parish is just a phenomenal parish, and there are phenomenal people sitting in these pews. When you consider something like the Warming Center, for example, and the number of people who volunteer, and I don't always know what people's job history has been, but I pick up a little bit here and there, and it seems to me that people who tend to volunteer for the warming center are people who have been in customer service. They're used to working with a variety of different people. And so they're not as nervous or afraid to be dealing with strangers. And a good number who volunteer actually seem to be from the healthcare field. And it's beautiful. When it comes to religious education, CCD as it used to be called, I'm amazed when I see those who are catechist teachers, how many were teachers at one time. Many in Catholic schools, and some even who currently are teaching in our public schools, and they race to get there and to teach our children. That they have a gift of teaching, handing on knowledge, and I see them do this with such beautiful love that I can only assume that they're doing in their classrooms or did in the past. Now, when it comes to Catholic schools, you know, we need to recognize that the handing on of faith is supposed to happen in homes, and that we don't really need Catholic schools to hand on the faith, because it's supposed to happen by the parents. Also, we recognize that public schools, at least for the most part in Wisconsin, are really solid. I mean, some of these religious ed catechists are bringing that exact same love and talent into their classroom in their public schools. But there's something about Catholic schools in which it can reinforce the handing on of faith that's happening in the home, and even sometimes create more conversation about the gospel, from Adam to Moses to Jesus to today, the value of sacraments. Some of the things that even as parents we can feel a little bit overwhelmed to hand on all this knowledge and to have them sit down for 20 minutes to an hour every weekday and have a conversation with our kids. So Catholic schools are a huge aid to what happens in the home, supplemental but huge. And then for our public school and all the quality teachers, they can bring the love of Jesus in how they interact. But they don't really have the ability to begin going through the Beatitudes, calling on Jesus by name, and saying Jesus is the standard by how we treat one another, including on the playground. What would Jesus do? And so Catholic schools, I really believe, even though handing on of faith happens at home, and our public schools do a good job handing on knowledge, there's something about Catholic schools that reach a higher expectation, are aiming to accomplish even more, to be able to talk not just about respect, but that you are made in the image and likeness of God, you are sacred and you're part of the kingdom of God, and let's build up this kingdom here on earth. And that when we do service projects, they happen in public schools, probably just as much as Catholic schools. But as Mother Teresa said, I'm not a social worker, I'm a Christian. And that can be a big difference from the heart that it comes from, to try to see Christ in others and be reminded by my mentors and teachers and chaperones to see Jesus in others. I believe Catholic schools are worth the extra sacrifice. And it does take extra sacrifice. And this parish is making incredible sacrifices to help finance. But let us also lend our prayers and not be afraid of such a high goal as sustaining Catholic schools. And that fits the theme of today. It isn't about just minimum expectations, the Ten Commandments, as good as they are, but reaching for the highest expectation. And that really is the goal of Aquinas Catholic Schools.